I still remember the sound before anything else, the sharp crack of splintering wood, the metal clash of something heavy crushing against the table, and the sudden, terrified scream of my son. It all hit me at once, like someone smashing a cymbal inside my skull. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from, because what happened to my family is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. The moment I heard the scream, my heart stopped and restarted so violently I felt it in my teeth. I dropped the dish I was drying, sprinted out the front door barefoot, the afternoon heat burning the bottoms of my feet, but none of it mattered. All I saw was dust, a flipped lemonade table, and my little boy sprawled on the concrete while a silver SUV sat inches away, engine still rumbling like an angry animal that refused to quiet down. My breath froze, then exploded out of me as I ran toward him. My son had set up his lemonade stand that morning, all excited, wearing his little yellow apron he'd made in art class the week before. He'd written 25 lemonade best in the neighborhood, in huge uneven letters that tilted to the right, but he was proud of it. Our street was quiet, lined with trimmed hedges and small brick houses that held in the heat like ovens. It was supposed to be a peaceful day, the kind where neighbors stroll by with dogs and casually ask for a cup. The kind where kids laugh, not scream. I watched him wave at cars earlier, bouncing on his heels like the sidewalk had springs. Nothing, absolutely nothing, hinted that by lunchtime everything would explode. What triggered the nightmare was simple, too simple. A kid from down the street, Karen's son, a boy who'd grown mean because his mom believed rules didn't apply to her, walked up to the stand and demanded free lemonade. Not asked, demanded. My son, honest and stubborn like me, told him no, told him he had to pay like everyone else. The boy got red in the face, glaring like he'd been personally insulted. He threatened to tell his mom. My son shrugged, thinking it didn't matter, thinking fairness was enough, but fairness doesn't mean anything to people like her, not to those who think control is a birthright, not to those who sit on HOA boards and treat the neighborhood like their personal kingdom. I learned later that Karen was already angry when her son came running home crying. She'd been fighting with someone over the phone about HOA fines she'd caused herself, so she needed a target, a victim she could bully without consequences. When she heard her son had been disrespected, that fuse she carries around, always short, always hissing, finally hit the powder. Witnesses said she stormed out of her house without even putting on proper shoes, slammed into her SUV, and reversed down the driveway so recklessly she scraped her own mailbox. Her son sat in the passenger seat, smirking like justice was about to be served. She didn't see a lemonade stand, she saw a challenge. I was inside when the SUV turned the corner, engine revving hard, tires chirping against the pavement. My son looked up just in time, startled, still confused about why a grown woman was driving straight toward him. She didn't slow down, not when he stepped back, not when the table blocked her path, not even when he screamed for her to stop. The SUV clipped the table first, sending lemons rolling like marbles, pitcher flipping into the air. Then he stumbled on one of the broken legs and fell backward, and that's when the bumper struck him. Not full force, thank God, but enough to knock the air out of him and skid him across the concrete. Enough to make me feel like the world disappeared and only horror remained. I reached him before she even stepped out of the car. The second I knelt beside my son, I could feel him shaking beneath my hands, tiny gasps fluttering from his chest like trapped birds. His knees were scraped raw, blood bright against his skin, and his palms were torn where he'd tried to catch himself. I brushed the hair from his forehead, trying to stay calm, though my blood was roaring so loudly it felt like the world had narrowed into a single, pulsing point. And then I heard her door slam, loud, sharp, entitled. When I turned, Karen stomped toward us, face twisted in a fury so exaggerated it looked almost theatrical. She didn't ask if my son was hurt. She didn't apologize. She didn't even glance down at him. She jabbed her finger at me instead, screeching about her son's trauma. She kept yelling that my child humiliated hers, that refusing him free lemonade was bullying, that the stand itself was unauthorized commercial activity on HOA-regulated property. She spat the words out like venom, pacing back and forth, boots grinding broken ice cubes and crushed lemons into the asphalt. Behind her, her son stared at the mess with a strange blankness, as if he hadn't expected things to go this far. A couple neighbors stepped outside, attracted by the noise, their eyes widening when they saw my boy on the ground. Several rushed forward, but Karen spread her arms dramatically, trying to block them, insisting the situation was under control. The lie hung in the air like smoke. One of the neighbors, Mrs. Patel, pushed past her and knelt beside me. "Call an ambulance," she said firmly. I nodded, reaching for my phone with trembling hands, but Karen slapped it right out of my grip. It clattered across the pavement, skidding under a bush. Gasps erupted around us. Karen pointed at me again and hissed that calling emergency services would trigger an HOA report, and she'd make sure the fees hit maximum penalties. The absurdity of it made something in me crack. Slowly, the fear in my chest burned into anger, hot, focused, controlled. I rose to my feet, positioning myself between her and my son, my voice low as I warned her not to touch me again. The neighbors were no longer just watching, they were filming. Phones lifted, lenses pointed straight at her. Karen noticed and immediately switched tactics, plastering on a smile so fake it physically hurt to look at. She claimed my son jumped in front of the car, that she barely tapped him, and that the damage was all staged. She even tried crying on command, shoulders trembling but no tears falling. Her son tugged her sleeve, whispering something urgently, but she shoved him aside. In her mind, she was the victim, the hero, the enforcer of order. But the wind shifted then, figuratively and literally. A police cruiser turned onto our street. Someone had already called them. Karen's expression froze mid-melodrama. Then she marched toward the officer as he exited the vehicle, waving her arms dramatically, insisting she needed to file a complaint against a child running an illegal business. The officer raised an eyebrow, gaze drifting from her to the shattered lemonade stand to my injured son, and finally to the crowd of witnesses filming everything. His posture stiffened, hand resting near his belt as he told her to step back. She refused. She tried grabbing his arm. The crowd gasped again. The officer's patience evaporated in an instant. He ordered her to step aside and keep her hands visible. Instead, she screamed that she knew the law better than him. Her mistake was that he did know her. The twist was coming. The officer's jaw tightened as he stared at Karen, recognition flashing across his eyes like someone flipping a switch. He didn't see a distressed neighbor. He saw someone he'd dealt with before. Someone who had filed dozens of false HOA-related complaints in the past year alone. Someone who had impersonated officials, forged warning notices, and harassed residents with fake fines. When he asked her to confirm her name, Karen puffed up proudly. The second she did, his entire stance changed. He called dispatch, requested a supervisor, and told Karen she was being detained for investigation. Suddenly, her bravado cracked. She stumbled back, stuttering, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. But the crowd wasn't having it. Mrs. Patel handed over her phone, showing footage not only of the aftermath, but of the moment Karen's SUV struck the lemonade stand. Another neighbor stepped forward with security footage from a doorbell camera showing her speeding down the street. Karen's son, overwhelmed, finally broke down crying and told the officer everything. That his mother told him they were going to scare my son, that she hit the gas instead of the brake, that she said no one would believe us over her. His confession silenced the entire street. Even the wind held still. The officer placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder and guided him toward another patrol car for safety. Karen lunged toward him, shrieking that he was betraying her. That's when the cuffs came out, cold, metallic, final. She was pressed against the hood of her own SUV, yelling threats, screaming about lawyers, HOA authority, power she never actually had. Neighbors recorded every second. I stood quietly, holding my son close as paramedics arrived and checked him over. He'd be okay, bruised and scraped, but okay. When they lifted him onto the stretcher, he squeezed my hand and whispered that he didn't understand what he did wrong. My heart cracked. I told him he did nothing wrong, nothing at all. The aftermath rippled through the neighborhood for weeks. The HOA officially removed Karen from the board, citing misconduct, fraud, and endangering a minor. Several residents filed complaints. Her son was placed temporarily with relatives while the investigation continued. Karen faced charges for reckless endangerment, destruction of property, and interfering with an officer. The SUV she weaponized was impounded. Every part of her artificial sense of power gone, and the best part, the HOA reinstated community rules that protected kids' stands, calling them positive neighborhood activities. My son got a handwritten apology from the board and a handmade sign that declared him an official neighborhood lemonade ambassador. The following weekend, he rebuilt his stand with sturdier legs and brighter paint. Neighbors lined up halfway down the block, dropping more money into his jar than lemonade could ever earn. When he looked up at me and smiled, really smiled, I felt the world tilt back into place. Justice wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady, it was honest, it was the reminder that authority means nothing without responsibility.